Hello, my dear friends, and welcome back to our channel Mysterious Untold Books. Life often feels like a relentless juggling act. Between family responsibilities, career demands, household chores, and personal aspirations, you might find yourself constantly exhausted, wondering why you never quite feel on top of things. The truth is, your exhaustion isn't necessarily from having too much to do. It's from trying to do everything with equal attention and perfection. Many of us oscillate between two extremes, either striving frantically to master everything in our lives or giving up entirely when it all becomes too overwhelming. But there's a more sustainable approach. By identifying what truly matters to you personally and focusing your energy there, while creating simpler systems for everything else, you can transform your daily experience. This isn't about doing more or less. It's about doing what counts with intention and allowing yourself the freedom to be selective about where you invest your precious time and energy. Chapter 1. Define your personal priorities. Understanding what truly matters to you is the cornerstone of creating a fulfilling life. Without clarity about your personal priorities, you'll constantly feel pulled in multiple directions, trying to meet everyone's expectations but your own. True priorities aren't what social media influencers tell you should matter or what your mother-in-law thinks is important. They're the values and activities that align with your authentic self. Kundra Adaji describes how she once approached every aspect of her life with perfectionism. During a staff breakfast she volunteered to host at her church, she attempted to create an elaborate spread of stuffed French toast despite having no recipe or experience making it. Her desire to impress resulted in a culinary disaster, essentially warm cheese and jelly sandwiches masquerading as gourmet breakfast. Her perfectionist approach backfired spectacularly, leaving her embarrassed and everyone else hungry. This experience taught her that trying to care deeply about everything leads to caring effectively about nothing. The incident helped her realize she was caring too much about the wrong things. She was focused on others' impressions rather than what truly mattered, creating a welcoming experience. By misaligning her efforts with her actual priorities, she set herself up for failure. To define your personal priorities, start by examining where you naturally spend time when not feeling obligated. Notice what energizes you versus what depletes you. Consider your values around family, health, creativity, career, and community. Write these observations down without judgment. Remember that priorities can shift with different life seasons. What matters during early parenthood might differ from priorities during career advancement or retirement years. Create a simple statement for each major life area that captures what success looks like to you, not others. For example, a successful home life for me means having meaningful conversations with my family daily, or career success means using my creative skills to solve interesting problems, not necessarily climbing the corporate ladder. These personalized definitions become your North Star when making decisions. Review your priorities regularly, especially during major life transitions. This isn't a one-time exercise but an ongoing practice of self-awareness that helps you allocate your finite resources, time, energy, and attention toward what truly matters to you. Chapter 2. Start small and build momentum. The concept of starting small is deceptively powerful. Most of us approach change with an all-or-nothing mentality. We either commit to transforming our entire lives overnight or decide the effort isn't worth attempting at all. This binary thinking is precisely what keeps us stuck in patterns that don't serve our priorities. Kondra shares her personal struggle with yoga. For years, she tried to establish a yoga practice by committing to 30-minute sessions 4 times weekly. Despite downloading apps, buying equipment, and creating elaborate plans, she never succeeded. The goal was simply too ambitious for her current reality. Frustrated but determined, she decided to try a radically different approach. She committed to doing just 1 down dog pose daily. Just 1. It seemed almost laughably inadequate. The magic happened when she stuck with this minimal commitment. For months, she performed her single pose daily, occasionally adding a second pose when she felt inspired. There were no dramatic physical changes or Instagram-worthy yoga transformations. But something more valuable was happening. She was building the habit of showing up for herself daily. 14 months later, she noticed a surprising shift. Her feet naturally touched the ground in down dog. Her plank became steady, and her breathing synchronized with her movements without conscious effort. The transformation had happened so gradually she hadn't noticed it occurring. This approach works because small steps eliminate the resistance we feel toward challenging changes. When something feels tiny and doable, we remove the psychological barriers of intimidation and perfectionism. Small actions require minimal motivation, making them sustainable even on difficult days. They serve as gateway habits that gradually expand into more significant practices. To implement this principle, identify one priority area where you've been stuck. Instead of creating an ambitious plan, determine the smallest possible action that moves you in the right direction. Want to read more? Start with 3 pages daily. Hoping to declutter your home? Begin with removing one item each day. Wish to improve your nutrition? Add one vegetable to your lunch. The key is consistency over intensity. Track your small action with a simple check mark on your calendar, creating a visual chain you won't want to break. Celebrate these minor victories as significant achievements. They're the building blocks of lasting change. As the small action becomes automatic, you can gradually expand, but only when the foundation is solid. Remember that seemingly insignificant daily choices accumulate into profound life changes. The path to your priorities isn't paved with grand gestures, but with tiny, consistent steps in the right direction. Chapter 3. Create systems, not goals. Setting goals gives us direction, but creating systems ensures we actually arrive at our destination. The distinction is subtle but transformative. Goals focus on the outcome you want to achieve, while systems address the processes that lead to those outcomes. When we fixate solely on goals without supportive systems, we often experience the frustration of knowing what we want but repeatedly failing to achieve it. Conrad describes her struggle with maintaining a tidy home. She would set ambitious goals. I'll deep clean the entire house this weekend, or I'll finally organize all the closets. These goals would energize her temporarily, but without practical systems to maintain cleanliness, her home would quickly revert to its previous state. The cycle of motivation followed by disappointment was exhausting and demoralizing. Everything changed when she shifted her focus from the goal of having a clean house to creating simple systems that made cleanliness more automatic. She established a 10-minute reset system where the family would spend just 10 minutes each evening returning items to their designated places. She created a one-in, one-out system for belongings, preventing accumulation. These weren't revolutionary concepts, but by viewing them as ongoing systems rather than one-time goals, she transformed her relationship with home organization. To create effective systems in your own life, start by identifying your recurring pain points. Notice which goals you set repeatedly without lasting success. These are prime candidates for systems thinking. For each area, ask, what regular practice would make this outcome more natural and automatic? Effective systems share key characteristics. They are simple enough to maintain even when motivation is low. They address root causes rather than symptoms. They're adaptable to changing circumstances, and they're aligned with your natural tendencies and preferences. For example, if you are not a morning person, a system requiring 5 a.m. productivity is likely to fail regardless of your determination. Consider how you might systematize your priorities. For family connection, perhaps a system of device-free dinners 3 times weekly. For financial health, an automatic transfer to savings on payday. For professional development, a recurring calendar block for learning. For physical wellness, preparing workout clothes the night before. The beauty of systems is that they reduce the need for constant decision-making and willpower, conserving your mental energy for what truly matters. By focusing on the process rather than fixating on outcomes, you create sustainable change that withstands inevitable fluctuations in motivation and circumstances. Systems quietly transform your life while goals merely point the way. Chapter 4. Batch similar tasks. Batching is the practice of grouping similar activities together and completing them in a focused session, rather than handling them sporadically throughout your day or week. This simple strategy can dramatically reduce the mental and physical energy you expend on routine tasks, freeing up resources for your true priorities. Kondra shares her experience running a small baking business called the Sugar Box, where she created themed dessert boxes for local customers. Initially, she approached each box individually, measuring ingredients, mixing, baking, packaging, and labeling one at a time. The process was inefficient and exhausting. Over time, she discovered the power of batching, mixing all cookie doughs on the same day, forming over 1,000 cookie dough balls at once, and packaging similar items together. This approach transformed her productivity and preserved her energy for the creative aspect she truly enjoyed. She soon realized this principle applied beyond baking. When tackling household management, she began batching meal planning on Sundays rather than deciding what to cook each evening in a state of hunger and fatigue. She grouped all bill paying into a single weekly session rather than handling each statement as it arrived. For email, she designated specific times to process her inbox rather than responding to messages throughout the day. Each of these changes reduced the mental switching costs involved in transitioning between different types of tasks. To implement batching in your own life, start by identifying activities that require similar mental or physical resources. Common categories include administrative tasks, paying bills, scheduling appointments, household maintenance, laundry, cleaning, communication, emails, phone calls, and creative work, writing, planning, problem solving. Next, determine the appropriate frequency for each batch. Some tasks need daily attention while others can be handled weekly or monthly. Create designated time blocks for your batched activities, preferably when your energy aligns with the task requirements. For instance, schedule creative work during your peak cognitive hours and save administrative tasks for when your energy naturally dips. Protect these time blocks by minimizing distractions and communicating boundaries to others when necessary. For maximum efficiency, prepare for batching sessions by gathering all necessary materials in advance and creating a supportive environment. For example, if batching meal prep, ensure your kitchen is clean, ingredients are available, and containers are ready before beginning. Consider creating simple checklists for regular batching sessions to reduce decision fatigue and ensure consistency. Remember that batching isn't about cramming more activities into less time. It's about reducing the hidden costs of constantly shifting your attention. By handling similar tasks together, you not only accomplish more but also experience greater presence and enjoyment in all areas of your life. Chapter 5. Establish intentional boundaries. Boundaries define where your responsibilities end and others begin. They protect your priorities from constant encroachment and communicate what matters to you. Without clear boundaries, you'll find yourselves overwhelmed by others' expectations and urgencies, watching your own priorities continuously pushed aside. Conrad describes her struggle with after-school chaos. With 3 children returning home simultaneously, the transition would quickly deteriorate into backpacks and lunch boxes scattered across floors, homework papers getting lost, siblings fighting over possessions, and everyone melting down emotionally, herself included. Her husband would arrive home to what resembled an emotional battlefield, wondering what hurricane had swept through their home. The turning point came when she identified the first domino that triggered this cascade of chaos: School items dropped haphazardly on the floor immediately upon entering the house. This simple action initiated a chain reaction of stress and disorder. After recognizing this pattern, she established a clear house rule: school stuff on the counter. She repeated this boundary-setting phrase daily as they entered the home, redirecting the family toward this new expectation. The seemingly small boundary transformed their afternoons. Items remained contained and visible rather than scattered and lost. Her younger daughter couldn't reach counter items, eliminating sibling conflicts over possessions. Most importantly, Kondra maintained her emotional equilibrium, creating space for meaningful connection rather than constant frustration. To establish your own intentional boundaries, begin by identifying where you consistently feel resentful, overwhelmed, or frustrated. These negative emotions often signal boundary violations. Next, determine what specific changes would protect your priorities in these situations. Consider boundaries around your time, when you are available for interruptions, space, how shared areas are used, possessions, what can be borrowed and how, and emotional energy, which problems belong to you versus others. Communicate boundaries clearly, directly, and without apology. Use simple, specific language that focuses on what is acceptable rather than listing prohibited behaviors. For example, I'm available for questions after 2 p.m. rather than don't interrupt me all morning. Be prepared to reiterate boundaries consistently, especially when first establishing them. Remember that others have grown accustomed to your previous limits or lack thereof and may need time to adjust. The most challenging aspect of boundaries is enforcement. Decide in advance what consequences will follow boundary violations, ensuring they are proportional and consistently applied. Expect initial resistance when establishing new boundaries, particularly from those who benefited from their absence. Stand firm with the understanding that clear boundaries ultimately foster healthier, more respectful relationships. Intentional boundaries aren't about building walls, but about creating the condition for genuine connection on your terms. They protect what matters most and enable you to show up authentically in every area of your life. Chapter 6. Schedule Rest and Renewal. Rest isn't an indulgence or a reward for productivity. It's an essential component of a well-lived life. Without intentional periods of restoration, your energy, creativity, and connection to your priorities inevitably diminish. In our achievement-oriented culture, however, rest is rarely scheduled with the same commitment we give to work and obligations. Kondra shares how she learned this lesson the hard way. She experienced what she called body shutdowns, episodes where she would develop flu-like symptoms without actually being ill. These shutdowns became increasingly frequent, eventually accompanied by panic attacks. Initially, she treated each episode as an isolated incident, taking pain relievers and crashing for 12 hours before resuming her normal pace. She fantasized about elaborate vacations or retreats, believing that a dramatic escape was the only solution to her exhaustion. This approach changed when she realized that waiting for the perfect conditions for rest meant she wasn't resting at all. Instead of chasing the ideal retreat, she began implementing what she calls seasonal rest, one day every 3 months dedicated entirely to activities that made her feel like herself. These quarterly rest days became anchors in her calendar, non-negotiable appointments with herself that she honored as faithfully as any professional commitment. Encouraged by the difference these scheduled rest periods made, she expanded the practice to include weekly and daily elements. Weekly, she committed to 3 walks or runs for stress relief, regardless of which days they fell on. Daily, she identified small moments of restoration that fit within her existing routine, flipping through a cookbook instead of baking an entire pie, or stepping outside for 3 minutes of fresh air and silence. To implement scheduled rest in your own life, begin by identifying what genuinely restores you. This is highly personal. Activities that energize one person may deplete another. Create a list of practices that make you feel most like yourself, distinguishing between those that require significant time, painting, hiking, extended socializing, and those that can be incorporated into brief daily moments, reading poetry, stretching, listening to music. Next, schedule rest periods at 3 levels: seasonal, quarterly days dedicated entirely to restoration; weekly, regular blocks for medium-duration restorative activities; and daily, small moments of renewal integrated into existing routines. Enter these appointments in your calendar with the same commitment you would give to professional obligations. Prepare for resistance, both from others who may not understand your boundaries around rest, and from your own internal voice that questions whether you deserve this time. Remember that rest isn't earned through productivity. It's a fundamental need that enables all other aspects of your life to flourish. By treating rest as a scheduled priority rather than an afterthought, you create the conditions for sustainable energy and joy in pursuing what matters most. Chapter 7. Be kind to yourself. Self-compassion might seem like an abstract concept compared to the practical strategies we've discussed, but it's actually the foundation that makes all other principles sustainable. Without kindness toward yourself, every misstep becomes evidence of personal failure, every imperfection a reason to abandon your priorities altogether. Kondra recounts a vulnerable moment after a difficult evening with a strong-willed 3-year-old daughter. Following a challenging bedtime routine that involved regrettable yelling, she collapsed into a chair and tearfully told her husband, "I feel like such a terrible mom." When he didn't immediately contradict her self-criticism, she became angry, demanding reassurance. His thoughtful response revealed the pattern. "Because I knew if I said you were a good mom, you'd throw it back at me." He was right. She wasn't prepared to receive kindness from others because she hadn't first extended it to herself. This incident illuminated how she held herself to impossible standards across all areas of life, creating a gap between her current reality and an idealized version of herself that could never be bridged. The resulting shame and disappointment continuously depleted her energy for what truly mattered. She began to recognize that viewing herself as a project to be fixed rather than a person to be loved was fundamentally exhausting. The turning point came when she began practicing what she calls the lazy genius golden rule, treating herself as her own friend. She started valuing who she was in the present moment rather than focusing exclusively on who she might become. She reflected compassionately on her growth journey without fixating on an elusive final destination. Perhaps most importantly, she began celebrating small victories and meaningful moments rather than reserving acknowledgement only for perfect outcomes. To cultivate self-compassion in your own life, begin by noticing your internal dialogue. Would you speak to a friend with criticism, impatience, and conditional acceptance you often direct toward yourself? Practice interrupting her self-talk with a simple question: what would I say to someone I love in the situation? Then offer yourself those same words of understanding. Implement a daily practice of kindness toward yourself, a brief acknowledgement of something you appreciate about who you are, not what you've accomplished, a small act that honors your needs, or a moment of gratitude for your body's faithful service regardless of its appearance or performance. When you make mistakes or face setbacks, try placing a hand on your heart and acknowledging the difficulty without judgment. Remember that self-compassion isn't self-indulgence. Research consistently shows that treating ourselves with kindness actually enhances motivation and resilience. When we are not depleted by self-criticism, we have more energy for meaningful change and deeper connection with what matters most. The path to your priorities becomes not only more sustainable but also more joyful when walked with gentle acceptance of your perfectly imperfect humanity. Thank you for listening. Audiobook by Mysterious Untold Books.